Hello and welcome to Preemie Chat, a space where we connect, learn, and share stories about the world of prematurity. I'm Fabiana Baquina. I'm a proud Preemie parent and Executive Director of the Canadian Premature Babies Foundation, as known as CPBF, and I'm so honored to have you join us here today. Preemie Chat is brought to you by CPBF, a parent-led charitable organization dedicated to supporting families, advocating for the needs of premature babies, and providing the latest information and resources to help parents and caregivers navigate this journey. Whether you are a parent, healthcare professional, researcher, or someone interested in understanding more about preterm birth, you are in the right place. Together, we are building a supportive community where stories are shared, questions are answered, new evidence is explored, and no one feels alone. Be sure to visit our website, canadianpreemies.org, where you'll find helpful resources, our latest projects, and most importantly, a community of people who wants to see our little babies thrive. If you're watching live, join the conversation. Share your questions and comments in the chat, and we'll address them during our program. If you're watching a recorded session, you can still connect with us through our website. It is through meaningful conversations and discussions like this that we advance practice and learn together. So let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And today we're going to talk about the importance of goodness of fit, music, the perfect match for social engagement. Beyond physical, goodness of fit refers to creating the optimal environment for each child to thrive. By responding to a child's temperament in a thoughtful and proactive way, we can ensure that children have opportunities to develop to their full potential. Music therapy can play a big role when treating infants at risk. In this talk, we'll discuss practical ways to bring playful, individualized music activities into child-parent interactions to provide a just right environment for growth. And I have here two incredible guests joining us live from Toronto, and I'll introduce you to them. The first one is Pat. Pat, wave so people know who you are on the screen. She began her career as a social worker before earning a diploma in early childhood education and becoming a professor at Seneca College in Toronto. While teaching, she also worked with children in childcare settings. In 1996, she joined the Zareno Educational Center in Vaughan, Ontario, which later became Kayla's Children's Center. She earned a diploma in resource teaching and a Master of Education and continued teaching child development at Seneca College. Her work has taken her to schools in Africa and China. And alongside her teaching, Pat has continued her role as an early interventionist at Kayla Children's Center. And our other guest is Wanda Gascho-White. Wanda is the Director of Child Development and Family Services at Kayla Children's Center, where she also oversees a therapy clinic. She's a certified music therapist with a master's in developmental psychology. With over 35 years of experience, Wanda has worked directly with children and infants through music therapy. She has served as president of both the Canadian Association of Music Therapists and the Canadian Music Therapy Fund, and has presented at conferences and universities across Canada. At the Kayla Children's Center, Wanda continues to provide music therapy and helps coordinate therapy programs to support families. And she's also part of the infant intervention team. So welcome, Thank you so much for
Thank you
being
so
with
much,
us.
Fabiana. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a presentation, right, to share with our audience. And to all of you watching us live, please do send us your questions, and Wanda and Pat will address them at the end of their presentation. So the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. So Wanda and I have been working together for very many years. And one of the areas that we work together at KCC is in our infant intervention program. And in this program, we have a group of parents who bring their infants. Anybody who is, they can come really from birth to age 2. The infants come with a parent or a grandparent into our program 2 mornings a week. And in that program, the infants get occupational therapy, physiotherapy, music therapy, and speech therapy. And also, what's really significant about this program is the parents have the opportunity to work and talk and get to know one another. And we also have a social worker on our team who meets with the parent group. And this gives an opportunity for the children to spend time, a little bit of time away from their parents in our program while the parents are meeting with the therapist. I just wanted to mention that I first became interested in Goodness of Fit when I watched an interview with a mom of a very young child with a psychologist, and the mom was very concerned because her child, she said, was not responding to her. And after being presented with a number of videos related to the interaction, the psychologist pointed out ways in which her child was responding to her. And these ways differed very significantly from her first child. And it sort of resonated with me because I began to understand that we all have different ways of responding to each other. And there are also significant responses that children will need so that we can understand that they are engaging with us. So Wanda and I, when discussing the topic, we thought this would be of interest to parents, as well as music therapy, because these are 2 areas that when we first meet our parents, they are not really addressed. Parents who are seeking additional support usually start off with physical therapy and speech therapy. But these areas are also of interest, so we just wanted to share our thoughts with you based on our informal observations. As Pat said, we work together in an infant program, and we have the privilege of being just part of an amazing team of therapists. We collaborate together. We have speech, physio, occupational therapy, and we collaborate together. We learn from each other, but we learn particularly from parents when they bring to us their stories, their concerns, their experiences. It really informs the program. It really informs the work and how we approach work. But most of all, and maybe this is most of all and something to think about today, most of all, we learn from the babies themselves. They bring us information that is priceless in terms of beginning to understand how to interact with them in a way that will help them develop to their very best potential. So that's really what our topic is about today, really learning from the child and responding to the child, the individual child. So in my work, what I do in the infant program, music is a modality. So I think of it, when I think of parent and child interventions, I think of music as being a meeting place where a child and a parent can interact with each other in a very genuine and playful manner and respond to each other in a very appropriate way based on the personality of the child, based on the personality of the parent, and a genuinely true interaction. So I'm hoping that after your talk, You're going to be inspired to bring more musical play, more musical activities and interventions into your parenting adventure. And that I hope that that really enriches your family life. Thank you, Wanda. So I am going to just talk a little bit about what goodness of fit is. And in terms of the theory, the, the, the underlying component of goodness of fit is that a child's development is shaped by the interaction between their own temperament and personality characteristics, between the environment that the children are in, and by the temperament of the people who are around them. And I think, you know, if we can sort of personalize this a little bit, sometimes we can look, if you have more than one child, you may look at your children and think, whoa, they're so different. Why are they so different? Or what should I do because they're so different? And inherently, for many parents, we figure out how to work with our children in different ways to really promote the best in our children. So before we begin this, and I will say this a few times throughout the presentation, we all have a temperament. The research tells us we're born with a temperament. The research also suggests, much of the research, that our temperament does not change. But the research also informs us that we can change our behaviors. And so in the next slide, what I'd like to just talk a little bit about are the different components of our temperament, or the traits in our temperament. And these traits were sort of identified many, many years ago in a study by Thomas and Chess. And according to them, we have 9 different temperament traits. And I will just give a few examples or illustrate what each of these traits mean. And if possible, while you're listening to this, you might be able to think to yourself, okay, which end or which end of the trait am I on? And this is, when we think of these traits, I would say it's what comes naturally to us. Sometimes we can change our behavior and we may not respond, but if you think deep into yourself and we look at these different traits, try and analyze and say, oh, yeah, that's me. Or no, that's not me. I'm at the opposite end. So the very first trait is called activity level. And this is the trait that, you know, if you have a sort of time available, how I like to think of it, is how would you spend your time? Would you like to be active? Would you run outside and go for a walk? Or would you just like to lie low, listen to music, scroll on the phone, something like that? We all have a comfort level where we feel best, and our children also have a similar comfort level. The next trait, and I think for parents, this is a really significant one, is biological regularity. Some children will want to eat every day at the same time. Some children will go to the bathroom every day at the same time. And their temperament, their way of being is to be very regular. And I think in an infant, if we have a child like that, it's sort of easy for us because their temperament is to be regular, and it helps us to sort of control the environment. Other infants are different, and they don't have that preset regularity. And sometimes, as a parent, it's harder for us to adapt to that kind of trait. The next trait is our mood. So this is, are we inherently optimistic, or are we inherently pessimistic? And I think, you know, some people see the glass half empty and some people see the glass half full. The fourth trait is adaptability. And this one is an interesting one because this is really, I think, related to flexibility. Do we like things to be organized and follow a certain sequence? or do we prefer, or are we, let's say, more flexible and uh, free with time, adapt to changes easily? And I think as a parent, this is also a very important one, especially when children are very, very young, because if a child is on the more rigid side and we are not on the more rigid side, we have to make an adaptation to be able to make sure the child is comfortable. The fifth one is called approach withdrawal, and that is somebody timid or is somebody bold? Sometimes we have a kid that will really reach out and engage automatically. It's just in their nature, and other children are more timid and need more encouragement to engage. The sixth one is intensity of reaction. And I think as parents of preemies and parents of infants, this is also very significant because sometimes a child at the one end will have an intense or a big reaction. So they may grin and they may smile at us and they may gurgle at us. And another child may have a less intense reaction and maybe make eye contact with us. And perhaps we would look at that response and think, it's not really, we're not engaging the child. But if a child has a temperament or an intent, if a child's intensity of reaction is a little bit less or a little bit mild, possibly the smile is a very significant way of engaging. The next one is threshold of response. And threshold of response is how quickly do we sort of go from 0 to 60. I think this one is, some kids will whimper and then cry, and some kids, something will happen and they'll suddenly cry, and it's huge and it's quick. So again, we need to understand how our child's threshold of response is, so that again we can respond appropriately. The second last one is persistence, and this is an interesting one because we believe persistence is good because you're trying and trying and trying, and probably maybe you don't give up until you succeed. But on the other hand, we don't want someone to be too persistent because we want to be able to draw them out and to engage them, right? And the last one is distractibility, and I love this one because this one is all about FOMO. So, probably we all have a little bit of that now. How many of us or how many of our children can sit in a room and there's something exciting going on, or we need them to do something, and either it's easy to distract them, they'll come, or they may be really hooked onto something and engaged, and it may be difficult to distract. So these are basically temperament traits that we're born with. And I just want to reiterate again, there's no one is better than the other. There's not a right or a wrong. This is what we get. And so we need to look at that. Plus we need to look at our traits and see how we can respond. And so in order to do this is a lot to remember. We, in the research, we've sort of narrowed down these traits to 3 sort of personality types. The first one is feisty. I like to call that spunky. Some people may say it's a bit difficult, but it's the kid that really we need to work hard with this child. This is a child, if we try and put them to sleep, maybe they don't want to go to sleep. This is the child, if we ask them to do something, perhaps we really have to work hard and look at different ways to engage them. Again, it's a great trait to have. It may be a little challenging to work with, but it's a great trait to have because these kids are spunky and they're not going to be pushed around. The second trait is flexible, and this is the easygoing child. So this is pretty, most people think this is a wonderful trait to have, and it is because the child is easygoing, but we don't want anyone to be too flexible because we don't want them to be pushed around. And finally, there's the fearful child, and this is a child that's a little bit anxious, and again needs to be encouraged and cajoled to do things. So why is this important? This is important because we need to try a little bit and understand our child's temperament, and we need to look at ourselves and try and understand our temperament, and we need to make sure that we can modify our behavior so that we can best engage with our child, particularly when they are small, so that the development can be optimal. So just before Wanda talks more about the environment, I would just like to give an example. If I'm a feisty person and my child is feisty, my infant is feisty, it's going to be difficult for us to sort of work together, because we are both going to be very reactive. So it's very difficult, if not impossible, for an infant to change their behavior when they're so young. So as the parent, we would say, okay, I know that I'm feisty. It's good that I'm feisty, but in this situation with my child being feisty, perhaps I need to behave in a more flexible way so that my child can really reach their optimal potential. So actually, I think when we look at the temperaments, we look at the child's temperament, we look at our temperament, and I would say really the best is opposites. We don't really want to act in the same way as our child. We need to really modify our responses so that our child can develop well, and also we can adapt the environment. And now Wanda is going to address for us how we can adapt the environment with particular emphasis on how music can support this.
Thanks, Pat.
Thank you.
So why music? Why do we choose music as the topic? Well, aside from the fact that I'm a music therapist, so it's my favorite topic. The thing is about music is that we are wired to process music from a very young age. In fact, by 28 weeks gestation, babies are able to process music. And because we know this, NICUs are more and more employing music therapists as part of the health team. We know that live, gentle music in the NICU helps to reduce baby stress, parent stress. It helps babies to regulate their breathing. It gently acclimatizes infants to the environment outside of the womb, outside of the incubator, and it promotes infant-parent bonding. And I like to think also that it might start off a family, a parent and child, with musical interactions that will take them from year to year in their family life. When I say we are wired to process music, it doesn't sound that amazing. We take music very much for granted. But in fact, music is a complex cognitive integration of many different parts. We know some of those parts like rhythm, melody, texture, structure. They go on. There are lots of parts. They're processed in different parts of the brain. And yet at such young ages, we are able to put those pieces together and say, wow, this is pleasing. I love this experience. There are a lot of universities now doing research and healthcare centers doing research in the brain, music and the brain. Aside from our curiosity about music, we also know that music can impact well-being. It can directly impact health. It can impact stroke recovery. It can slow down dementia, and as we're seeing today, it can really promote development, especially for the babies that we're talking about, preemies, and the babies that we see in our infant program, some of whom are preemies, and many of others who are at risk for other reasons. So going back to Pat's slide about temperaments, if you think about music, and it's a very personal thing, but if you think about music can be just right for the moment. We're thinking once again about our temperaments And not only our temperament in its consistent and constant state, but also how are we feeling at this moment. We can use music that we respond to personally to activate us and get us going. We can use music to help us calm and regulate back down, to give us energy or to slow down at the end of the day. And we can challenge ourselves, just think of fitness programs, that driving rhythm. You can challenge yourself, or you can allow yourself to unwind, to de-stress. On the last two that I put here, interact and connect, is that music is very much it can be an individual experience, but is so often a social experience. And when we are lively involved in the music at a dance, for example, we've got very rich interactions. But when we're quietly listening to classical music at a concert, we can connect in a more quiet way. So this flexibility of music and the endless permutations of the characteristics of music that can match and help us either change or relax our mood is one of the reasons why it is so powerful as a tool. But as we've talked about already in terms of temperament, it needs to be completely individualized for the child, or for the relationship between the child and the parent. So let's take a look at a few of the things that I do, that I encourage parents to do. And I hope that you won't feel intimidated. We often have parents who say, "Oh, you love to sing, you sing, but I can't sing." My music teacher once told me that music is an act of courage. It takes courage. It's an act of courage. Singing is an act of courage. That's whether you're planning to stand on the stage and become a concert performer, or whether you're a parent singing around a campfire with your children. It takes a little bit of putting yourself out there. And if we want our children to put themselves out there, to take risks, to try new things, then we have to do the same. So how can we find a voice? That's the first slide I have here. This child is a little bit older, but you may notice that he has some challenges that have made it difficult for him to establish his voice initially. But I do this activity with much, much younger babies. The babies that we see sometimes have had quite a rough start in life. And they make sounds, but they don't babble as a typical child their age would. And they don't babble, and they don't make as many different sounds. And their sounds are not as long, the duration is shorter. But I don't try providing a whole bunch of sounds and music outside that baby's repertoire. I look for the sounds that they're already making. I make melodies that are only a few notes long. For anyone, that could be just a few notes out of a favorite song. And I sing those little melodies with long pauses in between. In fact, what I'm trying to do is tempt the baby to come out and join me, to answer me, to have a conversation. It takes enormous patience. I got to say that. It really takes enormous patience. A lot of the babies, I can see the look on the parent's face. They're almost near tears. There is no sound. There is no sound. And yet I will just go on, and they wonder. I'm not making a concert. There are pauses and there's waits. And finally, we hear a little sound. And when I reflect and respond to that, we hear a little more sound. And before long, we have a conversation going back and forth. When the time is right, I can expand and introduce some other sounds, some sounds that typically the baby should have in their repertoire, but may not have demonstrated yet. I can see Pat nodding her head, so it's great to have an audience.
Yeah, no, and it's
great to have an audience.
Yeah.
But you see the look on the parent's face when they see the possibility. And as children get a little bit older, for toddlers, they discover their favorite songs. I know that parents get sick to death of the favorite songs. And, here it's Wheels on the Bus. And some people, they've got it running through their heads at all times. But there is reasons for babies to latch on to and want to repeat and repeat and repeat. And how do we gain mastery at anything by practicing and repeating. One characteristic of music is the structure of music and the relationship between chords. Have you ever had the experience where your phone battery died or your radio was turned off just before the last note or couple of notes of a song? It's very unsettling. It's a powerful gap. And I encourage parents to use that powerful gap to encourage a vocal sound. Now, babies will fill that gap. And sometimes parents think, oh, look, they have to say the right word. We're not talking about at this point, is the child articulating a specific word? What we want is engagement. What we want is a conversation, and for the child to start using their voice. A single word, just that last gap. Nobody likes to leave that open and unanswered, but it also takes waiting. As we develop that, we realize that babies can start to do more than one word, more than one sound, and singing together favorite repeated songs, leaving gaps for babies to fill, or toddlers, I think at this point, is an amazing way for children to practice their verbal skills and their vocal skills. One thing that I know absolutely, and this is for typical children as well as all the children that we work with, they cannot and will not sing along with you. While you're singing, they are busy listening. In order to hear your child's voice, you have to stop and wait. And stopping and waiting is one of those things that we need to control as the parent, as the person who changes their behavior. You can hear kind of how quickly I'm speaking. I'm maybe a little bit nervous, but actually I just always talk pretty fast. So for me, as well as any other parent, I have to go against my natural inclination, against my natural behavior in order to respond to the speed and the pace that's appropriate for the baby. I'll move through these a little bit quicker because I know that we don't have too much time. But music and movement go together. If you've ever done a Pilates class with a great play track, or you've tried jogging with your earphones in, then you know that you can move better when you can train to rhythm. Rhythmic entrainment just means that natural the natural way that we sync our movement to rhythm that we're hearing. Babies sync rhythm too. You don't see it quite the same. Their motor skills don't allow them to say march in rhythm. At the same time, they hear and they feel the rhythm. In this picture, we have a child engaged in physio, which for him and many, many others is a terrifying activity in the day. We have a music therapist off to the side there. She's playing her guitar and singing, and she's engaging the parent who is also involved. Well, look at the child. He's happy, he's proud, and he is so connected with mom. Sometimes we have to have mothers outside of the physio room because the baby is too stressed. But the music here helps reduce the child's stress, focus attention. The child is able to perform and able to interact at the same time. And finally, music has the potential for so many different experiences. Here we have a picture of a child working with a music therapist. You can see Pat there in the picture. The adults are creating a safe space. They are resisting their urgency, their impatience to take a child's hand. This could have been a 5-6 minute delay before that child ever lifted their arm. It just happens that many of the children that we service are not the flexible type and tend to be more fearful and anxious and worried about trying new things. We have got the drum below, which when it's banged provides great vibrations. We have a very rich sensory experience up here. And you can see adults are hands off. They're giving the space. They're making the child feel safe, but they're waiting for the child to act on her own. And certainly she does. You can see how engaged she is. Let me just see where I am a minute. So creating an optimal developmental environment is actually quite easy with music. It's just a very natural thing. As I said, we are wired for music. Your baby is wired for music. You are wired for music. It does take, as I've already spoken about, it does take some courage. You do have to put yourself out there. You might say, and I hear this all the time, I have a terrible voice. Well, I'm not going to judge your voice. And I don't know what other people say about your voice, but I know for a fact that your voice is the most beautiful sound your baby has ever heard. And however you sing it, you will captivate their attention. You can see here we have a beautiful little picture of 3 children involved and so engaged in the music. There happens to be a very dynamic drum beat happening here and a lot of singing. The temperaments of the 3 children are entirely different, and yet they're all able to respond at their own pace, on their own, and engage them and engage when they're ready to engage at the distance, however close or far they want to be from the action. They're all thriving. Then one other thing about music, if you've got these types of musical activities or engagements happening between you and your baby, think of the opportunities for siblings. When a new baby comes home, especially a baby who's had a rough start, siblings are very often at a loss as to how to interact. Parents creating musical opportunities for their babies is a great way to involve the whole family and give siblings a meaningful way to play with their new child, their new sibling, their new brother or sister. Yeah. So I'm going to pass it back. I think I can see Pat wants to make a couple of comments before we put it over back to Fabiana. We're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Yeah. So I just want to conclude with reiterating what Wanda said. You can see just from this picture that everyone is having a different response. And, some of our children, they take a really, really, really long time to vocalize, a more quiet child, but they will engage and look and look and look with their eyes, sometimes becoming a little closer to the instrument. For some of our children, we sometimes even go a whole session, Wanda, that we don't really hear a sound, or they don't even, play with the shaker, but they love the vibrations from the drums. So in the music, in our music circle and the importance of music, there's not only the sound component of music. I think there's also the vibrations that children respond to. And as parents and educators, maybe they're reluctant to make a sound early on, but if we can engage them in a different way through music, it's also significant and will enhance their development.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you, Fabiana. We were honored to be asked to present.
Thank you very much.
Wrong camera. Thank you so much for this presentation. It's so great. I always learn so much in the Preemie Chats, and this one is really close to my heart because without knowing any of the science behind, I always sung to my son in the NICU. I think that's why his love for music came from. But I want to unpack a little bit of what you said, and I want to start in the NICU because our main audience here is parents of preterm babies or babies who are sick and spend time in the NICU. We know some NICUs across the country, they do have a music therapist as part of the staff, and some don't. For the ones that don't, what do you recommend? Can parents sing in the NICU? Can they play music? Is there any specific kind of music that is more attuned to the preemie babies and can help with the brain development? What are your suggestions and recommendations?
So singing to your baby in the NICU, I think I can't imagine a more beautiful moment. I can't imagine witnessing a more beautiful moment. I think that first off, the most important thing, one thing that's very important to me when I'm actually singing to a child, when I'm bringing music to a child, is that the music resonates with me personally. And I think that once again, matching the parent in that case to the child. So if a parent has a song, regardless of what the song is and where it comes from, Certainly, if it's going to help with regulation, and that's important, if it's going to de-stress for parent and baby, and it's going to help with bonding, then certainly the tempo needs to be slower. The pace needs to be slower. It can't be fast. It can't be loud, and it can't be a melody that goes up and down and up and down. But nevertheless, many songs that a parent might remember from their childhood, or might know from the radio, and perfectly, newborn babies don't care what the lyrics are. So it doesn't matter. You can sing the lyrics, or you can sing no lyrics at all. If there's a melody that moves you, that is important to you, then that is what you're going to share with your baby in such a beautiful moment. If you really cannot do that, if that is really too much, then recorded music can be also another option. The reason I didn't talk at all about recorded music is because recorded music can't look at you and say, oh, you need something different. It just persists at its own pace. But if you as a parent have that kind of music to bring in that you want to listen to very purposefully, think, what experience do I want to have, and what do I want my baby to have in this moment? Will this music do that for us? You know yourself, you know the music.
And just to clarify, it doesn't need to be a lullaby, right? Doesn't need to be.
No, of course not. No. But as I said, there are some characteristics that would be jarring, right? But I think that's pretty obvious. It wouldn't be very attractive. You're not going to scare your baby with lots of fast, loud music, right? But any pop song, there's so many ballads that people know, that there are things that mean something to us through our lifetime that we've never forgotten. Those are wonderful things, because those things you can deliver. You can deliver all your feelings in that piece in a way that you can't with something, oh, I better learn this song. Right?
Right. And the other question I have for you is that so many immigrants families in Canada, like I am, I always feel comfortable singing to my son in Portuguese, some Brazilian music. And a lot of families don't feel comfortable one way or the other. What is your suggestion? Can we sing in a different language, our own songs? I never knew any lullaby in English or any kids song in English. So I said, okay, I'm going to sing my songs in Portuguese for myself, because that's what I'm familiar with and I feel comfortable with. So what is your recommendation for families like me, for example?
Of course, you should be singing in your language. You should be bringing, if you want your child to be part of your family culture, there's no reason why not to start that today, day one. There's no reason not to start that. There's no reason that you should be starting, oh, we better learn this English song because they may have it at nursery later on. There's plenty of future time for children to be in English language nurseries and learn nursery songs. No, certainly the songs that people have brought with them, with their cultures, and that they've inherited through their family, this is a perfect time to share them. Remember, part of this special relationship between music and the baby and a parent in NICU is forming a bond, is forming that bond. Now, when you have a baby who's not in the NICU, you don't lose any time. You just go straight to it, right? You don't have the heartache, the pain of being separated from your baby, and the worry that's preoccupying you from being able to just think about being a parent. So if you at times like that, the music of your culture may have a more warming and relaxing quality for you. There's no question that your state of mind is what your baby is sharing.
Yes, absolutely. And it's so beautiful what you said. So let's fast forward a little bit at home now. So now we are home. We left the NICU. We have this very intense experience, traumatic experience carrying with us. So for us parents, and you and Pat, you did talk about the emotions, the temperament, the traits, and kind of we have to match somewhat our baby. So we don't know what the baby is like yet, right? Maybe the baby is a little fussy in the NICU, but it's a NICU baby coming home. But we also coming home with a lot of trauma.
Mhm.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about this regulation at home with us as parents and our baby coming from this extreme experience coming home from the NICU, and how do we attune to our baby's cues to see what traits they have? What should I be playing or in terms of music or interact with my child at home from the beginning?
So I'd maybe take just the very first part of that, and then I'm going to pass it on to Pat. The first part that I'd like to take is that when a parent has trauma, it's very hard for the parent to be able to they want with all their heart to meet their baby's needs. They want to respond to their baby, but there is a wall between them and their baby, and that is the fact that they need taking care of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And we're interventionists of kids all the way up. And all of my career, we've talked about the characteristic of self-regulation, that idea of calming yourself down. Well, I think it's a bit of a fallacy, and I've attended a few workshops now that have really, really emphasized that. We never become completely self-regulating. We need the people around us to help us co-regulate.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a parent who has a new baby, baby's fussy, as you said. What's the baby like? How do we know? A parent wants to do their best. I think that families should be ready to step up, give that parent time to breathe, give that parent time to rest. And parents should be reaching out for that support. And then, obviously, as we've talked about, music can also play a big part in helping a parent take care of themselves, because you have to take care of yourself first. And in our infant program, we see this all of the time. Our parents, they're grieving the baby they didn't have, the experience they didn't have. And now they have to come to terms with the experience they do have, which is a very different thing. Music is very positive. So we do try to bring a very positive vibe to help families at least mitigate some of that and to feel joy. And looking for joy, I think. And then getting to know the baby, that's a whole other thing. And I'm just going to turn that over to Pat.
Yes, and I just want to say, Fabiana, that nobody's perfect, right? And when we come home and we filled with that worry and that anxiety and all those other emotions, of course, everyone's going to try and be the best parent they can be. But hey, this is your first round. It's not going to be possible. So I would say if people have a family to reach out to, it's really helpful to get support, because I think most of us need time just to wind down and to really be in touch with ourselves and to be able to relax. First of all, to be able to sleep. I mean, if you're not sleeping, I don't know, for me, but when I don't sleep, I'm just horrible, right? So you can have all the knowledge in your brain, oh, I shouldn't be doing or I should be doing, but if you're not feeling good, you're not going to be doing. And very, very importantly, we cannot ever be hard on ourselves. Whatever we're doing the best we can do at that time. And I think we have to remember that. So if parents have someone to reach out to be able to rest and do that. And then, of course, with all children, I mean, we know the traits. We have them now. It's all documented. But we have to get to know our child. And, maybe the child's not well, doesn't mean, and they're crying, doesn't mean they're not a flexible child. So these traits are just to help us move along. These traits are just to help us maybe understand ourselves, I would say, a lot, because then we can modify the way we respond to the child. But nothing's written in stone and nobody's perfect. I think it just gives us some idea of how children may present differently. And all we can do is the best we can do. And if it's not so good on Wednesday, hopefully it will be better on Thursday. But parents have to be kind to themselves, because honestly, we didn't get a manual, we didn't get a handbook, and we're all different. And this is not growing a flower. There's a lot of things we have to do. There's not one way that is the right way. So really, I urge everybody to be good to yourself. And if you make a mistake, don't worry about it. The next day will be better. And of course, support, like Wanda said, support is really important. We see from our parents here that when they can come and they can talk to other parents in a similar situation, it's really very, very helpful. So I would say that is a big thing, to try and reach out and get support.
Absolutely. And you mentioned so many important things for all parents, new parents, whether the parent experiences an ICU or not, a new parent, there's so many changes, and we really have to be kind to ourselves. But in the NICU parents, we experience something so traumatic, right? You see our baby struggling to breathe and to feed, and then babies have a lot of spells because the baby forget to breathe, and there's so much going on with these preemie babies. And yes, and we are in this fight or flight mode for so long that when you come home, like you're still in that fight or flight mode. Now navigating this healthcare system that is so complex, so difficult, and families live in many different places with very little resources in some areas. So yes, it's so important to remind all the parents to be kind to themselves. And we are all trying to do the best that we can with the resources we have available at this time. So this is always a reminder to all of us. So thank you for bringing that up. And I want to ask you, like, when we are going back to the music piece, because now we are home and our babies start to grow up, and then we play music. How do you identify the baby's response? Because some babies will have a natural response, an obvious response. Other babies will be more gentle. So how do you identify these in babies that, okay, they're enjoying the music versus they're not enjoying as much? Because there's so many signs in the NICU to identify this baby. When they are very early in the NICU, you don't really know, by their expression, or they have a ventilator, you cannot really tell much. And there's so many interventions now to identify those things in baby. But when you're home, it might be a little bit more obvious, but not always. So how do you know babies are enjoying what you're singing or playing, or is the music too loud or not loud enough? How do you teach parents to observe those cues from these babies?
I think you've really hit on the crux of the issue, Fabiana. Parents, because we've already been talking about parents who are a little bit on edge themselves, even if they're making all the efforts. This is not an easy time. As you said, they've been in fight and flight for so long. And actually, many of the babies that we see, preemies or otherwise, are still in fight and flight. There's still a crisis around the corner that they're worried about happening. Is that it is easy to project your own feeling onto the baby. So it's easy to say, he doesn't really like it. He didn't even, he's not really paying attention. He doesn't really like it. We have babies who are startled by the music when they first hear it. And the parent says, he does not like music. And it's like, that's it. We're done. They don't like it. Some of it is the parent projecting their own anxiety on the situation. And other parts are just assuming that if I sing a song and the baby doesn't seem to respond to the song, that's what music is, and we didn't see a response. On the one hand, there's all many different other ways to present music in different ways, in more gentle ways, in more gradual ways on one side. On the other side, and this is the other part that you're talking about, babies' responses can be very subtle. Yeah. And one of the ways that I'm looking at when I'm looking at a baby, I think you do really have to sort of train yourself to unlearn and remember, what does your baby do when they're satisfied, when you know for sure that they're comfortable? Is it their breathing? Is it their movement? What do they do when the music stops? Yeah. When the music stops, are they like, oh, what happened? Where did that go? We have responses when music stops quite frequently. In fact, sometimes we have music stops, the baby gets fussy, and the mother says, oh, she's tired. She's tired of it now. And I'm thinking, no, the music stopped. Let's see what happens when the music starts. So yes, we have babies who can be overwhelmed by the situation, and we have to look for those cues. And even if a baby is overwhelmed, it doesn't mean that it's not a good interaction. It just may need to be graded, brought down, not quite so in the face of the baby, not so much. And maybe we need to know, when is it the baby becoming, when is it excitement, relaxation, when is it stress and being overwhelmed? As you get to know your baby, you will see those types of things. But looking at what happens after, and as I said, so many times, how many times does a parent say, "Oh no, she's too fussy. She's too fussy. I'm going to take her out of the music because she's getting fussy." And then I say, "Well, of course, we just stopped singing. Let's see what happens when we start, and then we stop, and we fuss, fuss, start, fuss, fuss when we stop." It happens so often. So it does take time. It's like reading a code.
Yes.
You're looking for the little things, eye movements, little movements, feet kicking. Feet kicking is a very big indicator. We have babies who aren't able to have a lot of facial expression in their early ages as well. We also have to look for other things. Reaching out towards what you've offered. There are these little signs, and they get stronger as the baby gets stronger and older. But even at the beginning, if you're sensitive, don't jump to conclusions. Try something again. Don't say, "I tried that, it's done, it didn't work." Try it again. Modify how you did it. Do it a little bit less, not as long. Make sure it's a better time of the day. Oh, she was hungry. She was tired. That's not a good time to try something.
Oh, those are great tips. And I have one more question for you, because you talk about when they're a little bit older, if there is no music, like the sound, but there's vibration, the drums, you talk about the drums, you talk about, the feeling of the music, which is this is why we love music so much, because it resonates with our feelings. And I love drums. I'm Brazilian. Drums for me is like a part of my childhood, and growing up is so powerful. But let's be honest, they don't need an instrument. A pot and a pan in the kitchen with a wood spoon can be an instrument.
I always
talk about that, because we don't need to spend a lot of money buying an instrument if you don't have a music and a great center like a Kayla Children's Center in our neighborhood. There are other options and things that parents can do at home.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, there's anything. If your child takes it and bangs it, that's great. If your child claps it together, that's great. Whatever they found to use, you can engage with them. You can encourage the rhythm. You can sing along. Sing, 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 stop, and see if they stop banging the pot. So anything, you don't need the best of the best of the best. Yes, you're quite right.
Thank you for sharing all this. And I just want a final comment from you, the music with physiotherapy, because a lot of our babies, they struggle with physiotherapy because it's hard work. I remember Gabriel, because my son has cerebral palsy, we spent years and years in physiotherapy. He hated going, he cried. And I'm like, okay, music with physiotherapy. What a simple solution to something that is so big. So talk a little bit about that, because not everybody has your center in their neighborhood. So if they are in Vancouver, other parts of Canada, can they bring this into their physio? So, okay, I want to play music for my child while you're doing physio. What are your suggestions?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the most ideal situation would be that mom singing to the baby while the baby's doing the physiotherapy with words that are encouraging them, like "you can do it." Words that describe "stand up so tall," and steady rhythms that aren't too fast and aren't too slow, but are steady rhythms to help their bodies relax, they feel reassured. They're focusing their attention on mom and something else that's pleasant, as opposed to what's going on behind them from the physio. So absolutely, if you don't have access to a music therapist to come in. However, if you've ever thought you want to learn the ukulele, it's a great time, because the ukulele is quite an inexpensive and easy instrument to learn. And we find all our babies are drawn to the string instruments. There's something about that resonating string. We never have a photo that doesn't have hands stretching out to touch the strings. But the same thing is that parents can exude their anxiety towards their baby and make the physio that much harder for the baby, or they could do the opposite and they can exude their excitement, they can exude their happiness for their baby, their pride, their and they can exude those things, and their baby will absorb those things. And so music can help the parent shift their perspective into something that's fun and positive, rather than, oh no, not another crying fit. I can't imagine,
And what is that?
Yes, thank you.
Well, certainly we use videos, and they're when they're videos, something not too fast. Once again, when we talk about rhythmic entrainment, babies can't move that fast. The physio's not that fast, so we can't have like a really fast. Even though that might be fun for dancing at home, it might not be right for physio. Right. So thinking of music that helps to make the movement easier, not music that you have to fight against to do the music, or to do the physio. So certainly we use recorded music here all of the time, because we don't have a music therapist in every physio session, and our physios find it very helpful. Songs that the babies really like, that also help them with the movement.
Thank you. So we're just wrapping up. I just want to share the Kayla Children's Center website for people who want to learn more about the early intervention program that you offer. And I know it's a great program of multidisciplinary teams. While moms or dads or any parent caregiver can have a break while they're in therapy, or sip a cup of coffee while the kid is having the therapies. I wish I knew about this when Gabriel was home from the NICU, because I drove across the city every single day to a different place for therapy, while feeling very alone versus having other parents around. So I think it's such a great program, and I'm so grateful that the two of you took the time today to share your knowledge and your experience, and really teach our families what can you do at home. Simple interventions that really creates a bond between us and our baby. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And to all of you watching us live, thank you so much for joining this episode of the Preemie Chats. And if you missed part of the session or want to revisit it, you can find this episode and all past episodes on our YouTube channel or our website. I'm going to share the link here, which is the CanadianPreemies.org. And while you're there, you can explore many resources and support options you offer to help families on their journey. I also want to put a quick reminder that every Thursday we have our peer support group, and it's free to join, and you can go to our website and sign up, or just logging into our Canadian Preemie Parent Network on Facebook. And also in November this year, I'm very excited to share that we're going to have our very first gala in Toronto on November 6th. All the information is also on our website, and I hope many of you can join us there. And as a charitable organization, CPBF relies on generous support to help people like you. Your donations allow us to continue empowering families of premature babies every step of the way. Together, we can create a brighter future for all preemies and their families. Thank you again for being part of this community, and we'll see you again next Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, for another live episode of the Preemie Chats. Thank you, and stay well.